Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
We're going to have a big, in-depth look on this July 5th, 2012 transmission at government run amok, government bankster-run world government, bankster-run healthcare. Somebody I've wanted to get on for a long time, Joe Farah, a very interesting journalist, trailblazer in constitutional, libertarian, alternative media that rivals, the biggest mainline news sites. Joe Farah will be joining us to get his take on the healthcare situation, on this big intel they're going to be releasing in about a week and a half on Obama with Sheriff Arpaio and a lot more. And then Russell Blaylock, MD, a retired top brain surgeon, will be joining us to give his expert view on and take on what Obamacare will do. And we'll also open the phones up. And yes, if you're watching on television, on prisonplanet.tv, about 98% of people are probably listening on the radio. But if you are watching, before I get a bunch of comments and emails and phone calls, I had a firework accident yesterday. And no, I don't think they should restrict fireworks because I had a fireworks accident, even though it was faulty. Because that's what freedom's all about. I know fireworks are dangerous, so I had my children back, 100 yards. And I bought a bunch of these in Tennessee, driving back from Bilderberg, because they've banned the ones that have sticks in Texas. They've banned selling them here. You can still have them. And I bought a bunch of the old-fashioned rockets. Well, it was little ones, weren't going off, or they would fire but not take off, with the sticks on them. So about 30 seconds after the third or fourth one was either sputtering and not taking off or not going off, I walked over and picked it up, and it fired in my hand. And I don't know how it burned the outside because it was in my hand. It fired. I guess I let go, and I think some of the molten stuff came out the back. That's why they were misfiring. They were just kind of shooting their wad instantly instead of, a controlled propulsion. That's my best guess, because I look at my hand, there was just molten phosphorus goo on it. And let me tell you, it was quite the experience. And it just reminded me of war, because you see the famous footage in Vietnam, a little girl who's been napalmed running, and she's just got skin hanging off of her. This is probably 1/200th of the burns she had. And there she is, just with this look of why? And why is this happening? And I see that in the look of the children all over the Middle East that get killed. Whole villages blown up to kill, quote, one terrorist, as the globalists fund al-Qaeda to take over the world. They're just killing whoever they want to take the land, take the poppies, take whatever goodies, the oil they want, and then doing it in our name. And I just thought, wow. And then I just had that fear every parent has of my children. The car wrecks, knock on wood, I hope they never have. The compound fractures, I hope they never have. The concussions, the pain. But you're not going to escape pain in life. That's the issue. This is some of the worst pain I've ever felt in an extremity. Because you can kind of cut it off and ignore it. Oh, that's just pain in my hand. What's really bad is occasionally when I have a migraine. I know you've experienced them, some of you out there. And it's like explosions in your head. I've never been somebody who likes pain. I'm a masochist. I don't like to give pain. I don't like to feel pain particularly. There's good kinds of pain, like when you're jogging and all of a sudden go in the second wind. But I had this migraine one time that was so bad that it started actually feeling good. Like these explosions of pain rolling around on the ground. It's like, at a certain point, I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of cool, actually. It was probably my brain releasing heavy endorphins because of it. But it was very nice to finally get to sleep. To be up. Yeah, that's the little devils. They just put them on screen. That's the little devil right there. I actually got photos and video of the culprits. I don't know if I'm going to put it out, but whatever. We'll just give regulators an excuse to go harass people. Look, when you're dealing with fireworks, look at the factories that blow up, killing all those kids just to make them. These are some dangerous things. Flames, ladies and gentlemen. We need to shoot the Obama globalist bankster care down in flames. And the only way to beat it is with not a lie, not propaganda, not fake arguments, not dancing around calling it communist or socialist, because that's only one level of it, calling it banker care, scam care, because people won't know what you're talking about. You have to say Obama's banker bailout care, Obama's banking takeover of healthcare care. And then you've got to add that, oh, the bankers, to a man, you don't get in the club of the mega six banks unless you're what? World government promoters. And why do they want a world government? Why are they in charge? Because they want power? Because they're control freaks? What is their religion? What makes them tick? You might want to find out what the rulers of the planet, they're almost in control. They're in control of most areas. They're expanding their control down to your local area with the nanny state, getting you ready for them to have you line up and get frisked and home inspections and drones spying on you. What's their goal? What's their end game? What do they want? What did most other empires do in ancient times? Not because it was a real expression of humankind. It was an expression of aberrant people, as many philosophers have pointed out, scum that rise to the top. They're ugly, vicious, hateful, cancerous people who the women don't want, who nobody wants to hang around with, who are unpopular. And they go and they seek power and they get power. And what is their ultimate expression? What do they always do, from Genghis Khan to Attila the Hun to Adolf Hitler to Lenin and Stalin and Mao and every other one? Every Mayans, Aztecs, Druids, they all demand. What's the most wicked, horrible thing they can demand? What do they always demand? Any of you guys know what they always demand? Sacrifice. That's right. They demand your children. And they first got to get you used to them putting their hands on your children. And, oh, we're going to give them a shot. And, oh, because we care about them, even though all the statistics show it's killing them. By the way, I covered this Tuesday. It felt like a Friday. And all the big Merck documents and that breaking news, will you ask Rob Dew to give me all that from the Nightly News Tuesday? Because I've got Blaylock coming on, who is a retired brain surgeon, to talk about socialist health care, but I also want to bring up that big caveat with them that one of the big pharma companies, in a lawsuit, documents have been released in a lawsuit by their own scientists that wouldn't be part of it, that they fraudulently said these vaccines were protecting people, and it was actually giving them the disease. Really? Really? Like the all over the world, from Pakistan to India to Brazil, the UN, funded by Bill and Melinda Gates, give kids a polio vaccine, and it gives, what, 46, excuse me, I keep saying 46 for some reason, 47,000, guys, type that in, please, 47,500 children got paralyzed or died last year in India from the vaccine. And by the way, that's a footnote in the article. Just a footnote. Just a footnote. By the way, that wasn't some radio flourish where I say 46 and then I go, oh, wait, it's 47. My brain is a computer just like yours is. Sometimes little ghosts in the machines get in there because the guys last week were researching that article. They're like, we can't find it, 46,000. And they go, oh, here it is, 47,000. So I don't know why I say 46. It's like my brain automatically downgrades how bad things are. And people think I'm upgrading how bad things they are. No, my mind downgrades things, and yours does too. In every psychological warfare study that's been published and declassified, they know you downgrade things. British intel document from the 1950s, declassified in the 1980s, republished in a psychology publication. I forget which one. I bought it at Barnes & Noble a decade ago or so. Talked about, if we massacre, say, 2,000 in Africa, if we massacre, there it is, Bill Gates and 47,500 cases of paralysis. That's a natural news story at Infowars.com, but you can actually link through to the mainstream media articles in there where they just admit it as a minor footnote. Probably have to go down to find some of the original links. Yeah, there's Aaron Dykes' article. Go down, he'll have links to it all. The point is, you don't just believe our site. So all of this is taking place, and it's just a footnote. You know, one child gets kidnapped, they grandstand and say, we want to be able to hack all your communications and take over radio and TV because it might save a child. One child dies, it's a tragedy, 10,000 died, it's a statistic. But the British intel said, let's say we kill, I think it was like, I think they said 4,000. And they use an example of a British operation to take over some mineral-rich areas. And it said, you know, let's say we kill thousands of children, like in this case, in whole villages and people. What we do is we know that's going to come out because we don't control all the press, even though it's Africa. And there's not a lot of press that gets out. So what we do is we announce 7 people were killed. And then later, months later, when the number comes out that it was thousands, the brain will automatically calculate to a lower number. Again, I already could tell they were doing that just watching them. I mean, it's like watching hunting, you know, a particular type of bird. You learn little tricks and things it has. I mean, I'm watching the globalist. I'm watching what they do. They watch us. They study us. They are a predator class that see us as suboid animals they feed on. And you guys are so stupid in the global elite. You're smart enough to dominate and take control of society because you're like cancer. I mean, is cancer really superior? No, you end up killing the entire body. But, I mean, if you were so smart, you'd know everything you do comes back on you. And I don't even mean in some spiritual way. When you poop in the pool, a.k.a. a Caddyshack, I mean, does that make it nice for you too? Because, see, that's the attitude that the globalists have sold the general public so that we don't stick together. That it's cool not to stick together, that it's cool to fight, that it's cool to be petty, to be vain, to be mindless, to not see the beauty all around you, to not feel fulfilled, all of this. And they're experts at making you feel like crud so that you treat others like crud. And they say to you, you know what? Yeah, this is the new world ideology. Go ahead and pee in the pool. In fact, go ahead and poop in it. I mean, I hate to use a gross analogy, but that's what it is. And people are just kind of like, all right. Hey, that was kind of fun. And pretty soon, everybody's doing it. And pretty soon they're saying, hey, the pool's supposed to be black and brown and things floating around in it. We're like, no, the pool's supposed to be clean. They're like, that's a conspiracy theory. This is good. And of course, that's an extreme sophomoric example, but it will certainly get the point across because you got TSA all over the highways now. You've got them sticking their hands down people's pants, putting people in microwave ovens, pulling colostomy bags off, back to the scatological stuff. Karl Rove, who's listening, is probably excited. And you see all this happening. You see all this unfolding. And they tell you you're the bad one. I mean, take this new federal document that Watson discovered a few days ago that was on Drudge Report the last 2 days, where Homeland Security report lists liberty lovers, that's a quote, as terrorists. WorldNetDaily also had a similar article in the same document. And it goes, now imagine, it says if you're nationalistic or if you say you love liberty or if you are reverent of individual rights, you're probably a terrorist. You're a bad man. And of course, we have all these other documents saying basically the same thing. Got to get out of the UN sticker, don't like the federal government, think it's too big. You know, basically, if you believe in what America was founded on, common sense, small government, you're a terrorist. I mean, we could have had the headline, DHS says 4th of July is terrorist, because that's in essence, and again, that's in essence what this is. And this is so ridiculous. It's like a pool that everyone has been defecating in, and I'm here saying, I don't want to be in this pool. This is not a good idea. This is dangerous. Hey, this healthcare thing is a tax to banks. The insurance company consortium admits and brags they wrote it and is telling business groups don't fight it because it's going to pump up their stock value. And people are like, well, that's your opinion, Mr. Conspiracy Theorist. And I'm like, listen, it smells real bad. It's floating by. I'm not getting in that water. Look, there's another one right there. They're like, that's a baby Ruth. They just reach right in and start gobbling it. And I'm like, hey, listen, this isn't Caddyshack. That does not smell like milk chocolate. Okay? I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, that we're in a lot of trouble. And see, here's the key to it all. In every society, and I've studied history big time because it's so interesting. That's where you get real knowledge, when you have a passion for it, not when you're like being made to do it. That's the secret of learning. I know you know that, but other folks out there, some of them don't. I want to reach out to them. The key to all of this is tyrants know human nature, and they want to dominate you because no one likes them, and they're ugly and they're stupid. Even if they're beautiful on the outside, they're ugly inside. And so they want you to be their slave. And what's the ultimate form of slavery? They want you dead. They want to scorch earth, kill you, get rid of you. They admit this is their plan. But the key to all this is by increment, they get you to accept the tyranny. And then, you see the first thing float by, and you say, oh, that's not what it looks like. It's not what it smells like. You see someone doing it in the pool, and there's propaganda going, no, they're not. They're putting rose petals in the pool. And you're like, that doesn't look like rose petal. They're like, conspiracy theorist. He says we're doing this in the pool. And you're like, but it is. And they're like, oh, really? The television says no, that it's Hershey's syrup. Again, this is what, and again, this is an absurdist thing I'm saying. It's satire, but it's real. The key is that once they get you to go along with evil by increments and disinformation and corruption, and once they mislabel things as evil that really aren't evil, and once they scramble the language, people get committed to the lie, and so that's why things sink so fast, because the most corrupt in the society automatically become the center of the cultural black hole, and they become the norm. Hell is released, pyramids are erected, children are cut up in pieces. As we wind on down the road, our shadows are taller than our soul. Soon I will produce and release a little video piece breaking down this little piece of poetry and giving you the deeper meanings of it. Tomorrow we have one of the most important pieces of information I have ever transmitted. Will premiere on this broadcast. We're just going to take a few days to put it together. Aaron says it's too important and has almost spent 3 weeks on it. So he was even up here on the 4th of July, I discovered. He didn't tell anybody up here working after he investigated these keys. Now, again, everything is about keys, ladies and gentlemen, unlocking information, keys. And we're all learning. The globalists do not want you to learn. They want to keep you stunted so they can control you. This is part of the ultimate sin. Attacking our DNA, wrecking our genetic code, an unfathomable crime against God's creation, against the very fabric of the universe. What type of entity would do such things? Everything the globalists do, devilish, devil-driven. If the devil isn't real, the devil is real. Evil, pure, crystalline destruction and hatred of all that is good is the ether in which we swim now. Black rivers of pestilent filth are being poured out upon our heads. And then these fake Bible-thumping devils that sell tyranny will sit there and tell you a piece of poetry like Stairway to Heaven is where the devil's at. And I'll break it down. I've decided to do that as well. All right, that's enough. That's enough. This next piece of news here, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get into Homeland Security report list liberty lovers as terrorists. Just another one. And we have Joseph Farah coming up for his maiden voyage with us, the legendary creator of WorldNetDaily that wrote the book on so many levels of alternative media and journalism from a constitutional perspective. Just as Drudge pioneered pioneering. I don't even, now that I can never find the words that describe something. Drudge pioneered aggregating news and information from a perspective that he thought was interesting and showing the common sense wit of the general public that he would represent, and showing that you can't argue with success, that he understood zeitgeist and was so dedicated to always being first when something comes out and putting it up there that the sheer dedication of it demanded and universal law, massive attention be focused in on it. To the point of the entire establishment media froths in frustration and anger that they cannot set the agenda anymore unless they stage a terror attack or something to get all eyes on what they're doing. They just and Drudge is the bellwether symbol of the tolling bell of the death of the mainstream media. When the Vikings had conquered an area, they'd drop a stone or wood pylon on the beach and bury it with half of it sticking up. And that's basically what Drudge was. No one recognized it back in 1995-96. It was that first big pylon being leveled into the sands in this archipelago of media systems that the death of the dinosaur media was being heralded and ushered in. But somebody like Joe Farah, because it's important to recognize people that swam upstream against the juggernaut establishment system and were able to not be successful, but were able to prevail and conquer. And people could say, well, they're not hardcore on this issue or that issue. That's your view. That's your opinion. The point is, people like that opened everything up for people like us. Sure, I was around when Drudge was starting off, but I was in one area on Access Television. That's different. People like Drudge and Joe Farah were able to explode onto the scene. Farah was an old-line journalist, run newspapers, magazines all over the country previous to that. And I didn't intend to get off into these guys right now. I just started thinking about, what do I say about Joe Farah? And that's what came out, because that's what's true. No teleprompters. Nothing but the lightning bolts of liberty striking out like flame in the night at the enemy, at the lie, and as they burst into flame. The devil doesn't have the fire. God has the fire. God has the power. We'll be back. Stay with us. Big news straight ahead. Like an eagle to the sea, into the future. We are flying into the future with a direct line to the past and all our ancestors. Every child that was raised and put into the future, and then they raised children and put us into the future. You have a direct physical connection through your parents, their parents, all the way back to the beginnings of our species. That your very bones know is a very ancient species. To the sea. Worldwide transmission. Maybe I should have fireworks blow up my hand more often and get no sleep, because I think I'm pretty fired up today. And if you just joined us and don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to talk about this briefly and then shut up about it, because we're getting all sorts of Twitters and comments and questions. The video is up at the Alex Jones channel. It's up at Infowars.com. And no, I'm not trying to imitate, those shows where they ride bicycles down hills and flip over people. I just thought it was interesting after it happened and thought I would shoot a YouTube of it. As you know, I do that quite often, especially when I have a day off. I have the story up at Infowars.com. Fireworks explode in man's hand. And what really happened is, again, briefly, and then I'm going to get into all the big news here ahead of our guest joining us. Yeah, it's not a joke, though, when it happens to you. I was out at the lake with my family. My parents were out there cooking hamburgers, all the evil Americana type stuff that extremists do. And we even had some American flags with us, just like feeling that the nostalgia as it all circles the drain thanks to the New World Order takeover and the occupation and all the collaborators. I think it's so fun to, join the tyranny team. And I bought, driving back from Bilderberg, a bunch of fireworks in Tennessee. One of these big mega stores. And there were like 4 guys in the store. 2 of them were listeners. They were real nice. They're like, you really want all these fireworks? How about these? And I was like, no. I like all these old-fashioned ones that are, the little rockets on a stick. And they're like, okay. Well, and that's not a photo of what I bought. That's just one they got off the internet if you're watching on prisonplanet.tv. And so, to make a long story short, I stick it in the sand up by the lake. I'm lighting them, and they're not going off. Or they explode on the ground. And they're just little, things that go up and pop. Some of them had little parachutes in them. It was daytime stuff. It hadn't even gotten dark yet. So I was I had a bunch of other fireworks. I was like, well, I think I'm cured today of these. I just watched the neighbors and people shooting them off. And so witnessing all of this, and also watch people on their boats, and again, people that were out there at the beach and just, all around shooting them off. And the reason I go back to this is I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happened, because I'm not an idiot. I don't sit there and have a Roman candle and then just drop it on the ground right after I think the last shot has gone out. Or just because it says 10 shots, I don't just drop it when 10 shots go out the end. I know to sit there and wait about another minute and then lay it down, aiming away from people and things. But these weren't Roman candles. And so I stick it in the ground. I light 3 or 4 of them. They either blow up or they sputter and shoot a bunch of molten fireworks propellant. I guess it's phosphorus or something, or molten, what's the stuff that goes on the heads of matches? Sulfur. I'm having one of those moments where I can't, I think the fatigue might kick in here soon. But the point is, I didn't get much sleep last night with this 3rd-degree burns all over my hands, all over this hand. And I light the fuse. It burns up kind of for a second. And I walk over and I go, another one. This is about 35, 40 seconds after. I grab it to look at why it's not, what's wrong with these? And boy, it goes off. Classic mistake. And I don't know how it shot out of my hand, like I said, and then burned the outside down to the bone in one spot. And it shot out all this molten garbage on my hand. So I guess that's what happened. It shot out and then just shot its propellant onto my hand. And it's not that big of an issue myself. It just really made me think about children in warfare who have things hundreds of times worse than what I have, where their entire bodies are burned like this or burned down to their ribs. Those famous film shots of children who've been napalmed, and you see their ribs, and the napalm is burned right through their ribs, and the skin is hanging off 3-4 inches off their arms, and they're running down the road. And I just thought about the incredibly bad mojo, reap what you sow, whatever you want to call it, that brought upon us. And so that's why it's a spiritual law, and the globalists know this, that for every great evil they do to other countries in our name, they have to abort so many of us. And they talk about this. They talk about balance. They have to kill so many of us and then damage so many of us with the vaccines and the GMO, because they want to kill all these other people. They want to kill us too. And the globalists do all these weird rituals at Skull and Bones of Bohemian Grove. I've infiltrated it. I've seen it myself. And I've seen the footage ABC News got at Bohemian Grove, or at, I got the Bohemian Grove footage at Skull and Bones. They take this very serious. These are weird Faustian rites where they transmute all of the bad they've done. They go, we know, the universe is coming after us for all the bad things we've done. So we're going to put it onto this child we're going to burn. And those world leaders around me in that crowd watching it were more religiously focused than Baptist churches I've been in. I mean, they were focused in vicious, power-sucking enjoyment. Teeth grinding, just for like an hour and a half, just I mean, just and again, the real ritual went on when they brought the casket on the back of this wagon with these horses drawing it over to these big billowing, as I saw them during the day, black curtains. And for about 10 minutes, something went on over there. Then they bring the effigy of a child out, have a boatman choron, bring it across in front of the big idol, and then burn it, and it screams in pain and all this. And but it's care, it's dull care, it's their conscience, it's the bad they've done, it's the cares of the world, it's all the bad they've done coming back on them. And then by the end, they have a voodoo marching band, a New Orleans style stuff go on. They have druidic priests and all that earlier. But at the end, it's, fireworks. And, yeah, wasn't that nice. But early on, it's from the ages of Tyre and the rending of the fortresses. May the spirits now arise and join us here. The old men are, I mean, that's who they are, and they just love, when they go to a mall or something, it's just to see people with their, spots all over their skin, and they see a child with their hair falling out, dying of cancer. They get a little enjoyment look on their face, little satisfaction. So much satisfaction in it all. And the satisfaction just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. The rending of everything good, the mutilating of everything strong, the pulling down of everything healthy and good, and just the black armies of death spreading out across the globe. The burning villages, the murdered children, the skin falling off their flesh, writhing in pain, the troops dying slowly of DU poisoning, sucking in the death. The globalists love that. Guard their opium, kill and slaughter whole villages, and then come back and die excruciating, horribly painful deaths, and have children with all sorts of birth defects from all the DU in your body. They love it. They absolutely, totally, and completely enjoy it. Sounds dark, doesn't it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I have seen the enemy. I have studied them. I know their heart. People that are into evil think that those of us that are truly good, doesn't mean I'm a good person, doesn't mean I'm not full of the flesh, doesn't mean I don't have my own problems and my own struggles. But I, in my heart, love what is good, and I am not a person who lives in fear. And I know the creator of the universe knows me, as knows the entire creation. And I am not part of these people. I make the spiritual decision to not be part of evil. And that doesn't mean I'm on some high horse and follow all the Pharisaical rules. Again, the system is very good at telling you evil is admiring a woman. Or, and I'm not even saying in the final equation, if you're betrothed, obviously that is bad, because then it hurts children. But the idea that life, the lover of life's not the sinner. It's very important to understand that. It's the haters of life. Those that kill, steal, and destroy. That's evil. That's sin. War is sin. When it is started. Period. Offensive war is absolute, pure, distilled evil. And this nation has this pride in offensive war. And I see men that get a gleam in their eye like the F-16s and the drones, the Predators, the Reapers, and the black uniforms. Oh, the power. Oh, you're so powerful. Oh, see, they worship the dark flame of evil. They worship the majesty of death. I say there's no majesty in it all. The only majesty in death is when you've laid down your life for innocence. That's the only majesty in death. But death wantonly spilled out against life for the sake of death is pathetic. In fact, radio listeners, and I'll get to the news, I will draw an image of the devil. I think I should start, because images are powerful. The government wants to be these big marble buildings and Air Force One and Secret Service guys with aggressive James Bond stances, and the president strutting, and everything's a big act, and oh, the government's invincible and huge and beautiful and just unstoppable. It's all a hoax and a fraud. And the culture builds up the devil as this incredibly powerful entity. The devil is a crazed-eyed creature that looks about like a concentration camp victim with pus dripping out of its little vampiric mouth. Let me draw an image of the devil here for you. That's some pus dripping out the eye. This is what the devil looks like. And that's why the devil wants to make you spiritually look like that as well. That's why the devil wants to pull everything down and tell you that what is good is bad and what is bad is good, that black is white, that up is down, that wrong is right. All right, let me just give you the news here. This story is viral. KJCT. Passengers could be asked to give drink samples to TSA. The TSA would not say why they're testing for or why they're doing it, but travelers say they have a right to know. Okay, Watson saw this story, wrote about it. It went viral at that point today, but my issue here with this is that I thought long and hard when I saw this morning, because we've talked about this. This has been going on at least 3 years. At Austin Bergstrom and other airports, Atlanta, also at Liberty, there in New Jersey, I have seen them, and I'm sure you've all seen it. I'm sure there's footage of it out there. They have carts now at the gate. You've already gone through the checkpoint, and they've got people now at the actual gate bugging their eyes out at you with their hands behind their back like they're intimidating you. That's what it's all about. They admit that in their internal memos to, quote, be imperial, overlording. It's to get you perping. It's to train non-criminal classes of people that you're criminals. It's to induct you into bureaucrats putting their hands on you. This is the breaking. Just like a pedophile, touches a child to test. They're just hiking their leg on you and marking you as their whore. They are your pimp. They are your master now. They are breaking you. They are bringing you on the journey to total serfdom, slavery, servitude, chattel, bond slaves. They're teaching you to fear them. And it's freaking everybody out because I guess they're expanding it everywhere. But I've seen it almost every time I fly, pushing around carts, testing for things. And I've seen at Austin Bergstrom, this had to be like 2 years ago. I was sitting there eating barbecue before I got on the plane, Salt Lake barbecue, and they were coming along with a cart, and they came over to a woman. Wolves are attracted to people that they think are weak. A woman with children, and asked for her water. And she looked at him and she pointed. She was about 30 feet away, but I could watch what she was saying, couldn't really hear it all. And she was pointing, going, I bought it here. I've already gone through the checkpoint. And they bowed up and they said, give it to me. And then they decided, you know what? Just take a drink. And so she took a drink. And I've watched other people get real apologetic. I've watched them with 2 ounces of something, which is they're allowed to take on, scream at them in Billings. This is their religion. And so now people are starting to wake up to what's happening. But TSA demands bizarre new power to test drinks purchased in airports. I mean, I can open the phones up right now and take unlimited calls. You've all seen it. Business travelers, you've seen it. I fly out of Austin. I fly out anywhere now. There's a guy at the gate out there checking things as you're lined up, or right at the fuselage. As you go down the gangway out, there'll be a person bugging their eyes out at you. And so you can't bring your own drinks through. So you go through and you go, you want a sandwich? You want a bottle of water? You get it. You're about to make a 6-hour flight or whatever the case is, 4-hour flight. And they come over. And I've also seen them once in a food court. This was in Atlanta. And there were people, it was like a Burger King and McDonald's. I honestly don't remember which which company it was. The point is, it was a paper cup with the top, and they walked over and were talking to people and demanding a sample to test it. The people were going, what? It's about, hey, everything you do is wrong. Everything you do is criminal. And the more obscene, the more ridiculous, the better. Why do you think in the Marine Corps, when you're going through drill camp, they make you do all sorts of weird things? You've seen in Full Metal Jacket where they have to do weird things. This is my rifle. This is my gun. This is for fighting. This is for fun. That actually, at least in the past, went on. Weird sexual stuff and things. It's about, if I say jump, you say, how high? Yes, a boss. And if you don't say it, I'm going to knock you upside your head with this bullwhip. How does that sound? You understand that. And it's all cult programming. After you've been broken down, then you're told you're no longer worm garbage. You're now, you step and fetch it to TSA, they're going to treat you nice. Now, when we come back, liberty lovers are the main terrorists. Was going to get into Homeland Security report lists liberty lovers as terrorists. We'll get into that with Joe Farah, amongst other things. But Rob Dew, I saw Rob Dew down by the water cooler, and he said, oh, yeah, you have us fly a lot to do interviews. We see that all the time. Well, next time, get footage of it, because all the time, I saw the new zombie rounds they're selling. Like 3 months ago, all it is super double-aught buck, basically military-type buckshot. It does have a bigger kick when you pull the trigger. And I thought, man, that's a good news article. I bought some, meant to have the guys do it. And a month later, it was big national news. So we got to go with our instincts, not just to get big national news, but what's important.
Right.
That's probably why I never did anything with the zombie rounds. Why is that really important? Well, it shows how they're getting into this whole zombie culture and how what they program, people start to behave like.
They're making a zombie theme park in Detroit right now.
Exactly. And that was my next point. I meant to cover that on Monday. But on this TSA front, it's about mindlessly doing what they say. They now even do searches at the gate. Why did I never videotape that? Because that's never been on the news. Why? I mean, they do swabbing, but you have seen what I'm talking about, but you saw something I haven't seen where people beg to prove they're minions.
Right.
And see, that's the behavior they're looking for, Stockholm Syndrome. Tell folks what you saw.
It was literally bizarre. Waiting in line to get in is a Southwest Airlines flight, and they had the TSA.
Do you remember where? Do you remember where?
It was in Austin. It was in Austin. We were taking off somewhere. I think I was with Aaron, probably with Aaron because we traveled the most together. And I remember seeing the cart, and they walk up to someone, sir, let me check your drink, and they hold the little slip over it, whatever it detects for bomb residue, and they hold that over the drink, and they say, okay, you can cap it up, and they did it to somebody else. And then this old lady walks up, and she goes, can you test mine? I mean, it was literally this little old lady voice. I couldn't believe it. We're actually walking to get on the plane, and I didn't want to, obviously I didn't want to get drug into a search, or I would have taped it. But next time I'll just tape it, and we'll just let the chips fall where they may.
It's easy. Just get it up and get footage of it, because this is now, quote, breaking. I've seen this at least for 3 years.
Oh, yeah. This was a while back, because I haven't traveled in a while, and it was sort of in the middle of when we were traveling. So
it was when I was on that Jag getting video of everybody for like 2 films I never made.
Exactly.
But we just aired all the interviews anyways.
There's a lot of good interviews. I mean, and what I like about that is that we usually, when we do a video or a DVD, they don't get to see the whole interview. They get to see like parts of it. Well, here you get to see the whole thing and a lot of information that people are putting out there.
Well, that's why I haven't made a film in 2 years. I mean, we make films every week. They're like 20 minutes long, an hour long. We're just blasting in all directions. Production quality's even higher. Yeah. It's just blasting. But I do need to make a film just because they get seen 30, 40 million times instead of a 500,000 million times. But you add up all the little films, it's more views, which is what I want, is to get the word out.
Right.
But the films, it does have this event feeling. For whatever reason, people see it as a film.
It's time to go watch it. Get everybody together.
Yeah. But I mean, every day is a film. Every day is, we have like some days 3-hour-long nightly news now.
I watched Dreams of a Real Father this morning. I got up at 7. I'm like, well, nobody's up. I'm going to watch this. And I watched it. I was blown away by it. You've been so busy. You know why I was flipping out then? Yeah, exactly.
By the way, we have In the TSA shirts, not just In the Fed shirts, available at Infowars.com, InfoWarsShop.com. That supports us. And the reason I say that is we have Dreams of My Real Father. It's not even on sale till July 24th. We got contacted by the filmmaker, and they've been allowed to sell it early. I don't know why they just dropped that in our... I never even asked the guy, why are you letting me just sell it first?
He knows you're the tip of the spear.
I mean, I guess that's a good thing for everybody, because we got a big gas tank to fill around here. Infowarshop.com or 888-253-3139. But good. It's good now that this is breaking. I mean, I'm not like, oh, this has gone on 3 years. It's finally, local news covers it, so now it's real. Right. Now we're allowed to talk about it.
Right.
Because KJCT8 said so.
They gave us permission.
I mean, remember TSA for years said, we don't grope. Oh, you just go down the pants. I mean, that's not groping.
Yeah.
And a rape victim start crying, that's their problem.
Right.
Because they have to tell you when something is a problem. So, but again, TSA won't say why they do it.
Well, and the whole ashes spilling incident, too, where they dumped and then yell at the guy.
And then laugh at him, because it's about power. Some of the amazing articles up at Infowars.com, like the fog of Infowar, DARPA wants to bust whistleblowers with disinformation technology. That's really just an excuse to flood disinfo everywhere so everybody's confused. That's what enemies do to a conquered people. The Pentagon wants to stop whistleblowers before they can leak any data by enticing them with fake documents and information. So really all that is espionage activities against what's left of America packaged as security. That's just like they say, oh, we've got to have this takeover of the internet. We have to have the cybersecurity legislation. Have to have the Pentagon spy on all of you because of Stuxnet that the Pentagon made with Israel. And there's such disdain for the public. It's like, yeah, we got to get rid of your freedom because of Stuxnet that we made, but just never mind that. Oh, yeah, we got to get rid of your freedom because Al-Qaeda, and we're all lucky. Publicly dines at the Pentagon with the Secretary of the Army 2 weeks for 9/11 when he's on the news. All the other top Al-Qaeda members as well all hang out. But you know what? Sure, we're using them against Libya and Syria, but aren't they scary? I mean, come on, just give your rights up. Right now. Right now, Al-Qaeda's going to get you. Like they got Gaddafi and they're getting Assad. You don't want them to get you, do you? You're like, but they work for you. And they worked against the Serbs, too. And they're working. And I'm like, but you did. It's just like, it doesn't matter. The public can't understand you. Ha ha. And we're going to dance on their graves. And I'm like, but that's not very nice. It's madness. The globalists are crazy. Crazy like foxes, but crazy. They're crazy. They go around like a lion, roaring, seeing who they may devour. Every verse in the Bible about the devil is exactly... In fact, guys, will you print me verses? You can just type in verses in the Bible about the devil. There'll be whole compendiums online. Give me King James if you can. Maybe later if I have a chance, I'll do a vignette or something for the nightly news tonight. I didn't get much sleep last night with a firework malfunctioning and almost burning my finger off. See, this right hand has been through Hades. All the knuckles have been broken. It's got the, what do you call it? The tendon. Tendons are down in the middle of my hand now. See that? See that? And then, it doesn't matter. This finger I severed, was dangling my skin once. It's burned again. This baby's super burned. That's when a sheepdog attacked me when I was a kid, and I punched him in the mouth. I mean, this whole hand, I've got just cuts all over. It looks like a farmer's hands. You ever seen a farmer's hands? And those Homeland Security reports, they've got the new one out saying liberty lovers are terrorists, but that's just a repeat of all the other ones. And they say if somebody comes in to the gun shop, to the barber shop, I mean, there's hundreds of these flyers. We've shown them to you. They're public on the FBI's website. People don't believe they're real, even though they're on it. And it says if a farmer comes in and has got cuts on their hands, go ahead and call the police. Really? Oh, it says if they got missing limbs, go ahead and put them. Because it's just everything's suspicious. We got to check the bottled water you bought after the checkpoint at the airport. Because it's all about you're bad, the government's good. And so you read the list. So, does that farmer missing a finger? Let me tell you, folks, you got to go to a meeting of farmers. What's left? Go to some farmer meeting in the town near you. And I would bet 1 out of 5 farmers there is missing at least a finger or a toe or a foot or an arm. But see, it's bad. It's bad. Bad, bad, bad to be missing a digit. All of you are terrorists. All of you are bad, but the government. And terrorists could be anywhere. So now the TSA's on the highways. They're in the airport parking lots. They're at the bus terminals. They're going to be everywhere. Had a congresswoman on Tuesday about it. All right, we're going to come back. I got the head honcho, the creator of WorldNetDaily, straight ahead. We're going to get his take on everything, Joe Farah. And we are going to have Dr. Blaylock on as well to give us his take on government health care and take your calls in the third hour. Also, some big breaking news on Merck vaccine fraud. Stay with us. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We are joined by the man who created WorldNetDaily, a pioneer in alternative constitutional media, pioneer in media, period. And, of course, he worked and ran newspapers, magazines for many years before that. He is a true pioneer, and I am honored to have him on the show. I know years ago we tried to get him on, and I guess we were just going to the wrong place or whatever, and we're never able to. But then when I was up at Bilderberg a month ago, WorldNetDaily, WND.com, contacted my office and said, hey, we're literally 3 miles, and they were, or less, from where Bilderberg is being held. Come on over. And went over to their really cool command center. I mean, my place looks like some kind of military bunker or something, not on purpose. People would expect it to look like that, but it's just an old rehab warehouse. This place was just really an awesome-looking newsroom with, activity buzzing and, people all wearing suits going around doing stuff. So a first-class operation, but it's not what WorldNetDaily looks like inside that impressed me. It's the fact that they were it back in, 96, 97, 98, other than the Drudge Report, which broke a lot of news, but also linked to things. They were it. And so continuing to grow into publishing and radio and news reporters, TV, they do it all. And it's good to not be lonely. I mean, it'd be scary if we were it, folks. There's not many. There's Drudge. There is WorldNetDaily. Newsmax a little bit, but it's just really changed over the years into just absolute mainline Republican. I'm not bashing them. It's just not what it was. And so that's it. I mean, there's not really a lot out there that can really get a story out. There's thousands of great outlets out there doing great reporting, but there's only a few that can punch a story out there. And here I am interviewing myself now, saying things about Joe. And, I don't usually wax about a guest on and on. Joseph Farah, I keep calling him Joe because I got an uncle named Joe. named Joseph, I call him Joe. Joseph Farah of WorldNetDaily. Joseph, tell us about yourself. Because a lot of people have heard you on national TV or radio, and you never really talk about yourself. Where does Joseph Farah come from? What made you a trailblazer? What woke you up? And then out of all the topics, the government takeover of health care, the big news you're going to be breaking with Sheriff Arpaio, Joe Arpaio, coming up in the next few weeks. Of all the things going on, I'm going to ask you what you think is most important. But first off, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm glad we get an hour because I love talking about myself. But first of all, Alex, let me tell you what an honor it is to be with you. I feel like I've finally arrived. I've done all the Fox shows and all of the big radio shows, but I've never been on the Alex Jones show. So I know that I finally arrived. What can I say?
No, I've arrived with Joe Farah on with us. So, again, tell us about what made you.
Well, here's my story in a nutshell. Grew up a kid in New York suburbs, and really from my earliest memories was I knew I wanted to write. I loved writing. I didn't know exactly what kind of writing, but I as a kid, I would write short stories and things like that. Just always loved that. And as I got a little bit older and got into college, Watergate was taking place. And, of course, you probably remember. No, Alex, you don't remember this. I keep forgetting how young you're a kid compared to me. But for those listeners who remember the Watergate era, they will remember that this was, the big story, the all-consuming story across the nation. And, a major role was played by 2 reporters for the Washington Post. And if you go back and look at that time period of the mid-1970s, late 1970s, the most attractive job in the entire world for people my age was to become a reporter, an investigative reporter who could, change the country for the better, root out corruption and fraud and waste and abuse and all these terrible things that we see going on in government. So this looked very attractive to me, and when I saw the movie All the President's Men, with Robert Redford and Dustin Hoffman playing Woodward and Bernstein, I envisioned myself up there on that big screen, and I was off to the races. So that's what I studied in college, and when I got out, I fully expected that the New York Times would be waiting to hire me, but that wasn't the case, and I found out I had to, start at the bottom, working at a weekly newspaper, and, which was great because you learn to do a lot of things that you would never get to learn to do at a big newspaper. Graduated to, the dailies and kind of got a break in 1979 when, through some acquaintances I had made, I got a chance to go to Los Angeles and get a job at the Herald Examiner, which was at the time one of the biggest papers in the country. It was the Hearst Corporation's biggest paper. And I very quickly rose through the ranks, not because I was, I'm not going to tell you it's because I was the most talented person in the newsroom, but I will tell you this, Alex, I think it had a large degree, to a large extent, it had to do with my worldview. I had a worldview that was different from anybody else in that newsroom and practically any other newsroom in the country, which stemmed in large part due to the fact that I'm a Christian. And, so I see the world as a Christian. And a lot of people back then, my colleagues would say, well, you're a Christian, well, aren't you biased? And I say, well, everybody's biased, but my bias is to pursue the truth, because the Bible tells us, you seek the truth and it will set you free. So that has always been my bias. What's true? What's real? And anyway, that different worldview positions me to see stories that my colleagues never saw. They never saw them coming. And so this put me in good favor with my bosses. They didn't know why, but they knew this kid, this 20-something-year-old kid was always coming up with stories that nobody else could figure out. And so I by the time I was 27, I was running the newsroom of the Los Angeles Herald Examiner. And so it was, it's funny because a lot of people think, well, you were a Christian, you must have faced, terrible hostility and bias in the mainstream secular media. And I tell them, no, actually it was the opposite. It was like an advantage because I was, out of 200 people in our newsroom, I think I was the only one who was a Christian. And so therefore it was like a great advantage. And that surprises a lot of folks. So from there, I went on to get an opportunity to actually run daily newspapers in major markets in Southern California, Northern California. My last stop being the Sacramento Union, which was the oldest paper west of the Mississippi at the time, in a very competitive small market, actually. Only 1 million people in Sacramento, but had 2 newspapers. And so I did my best to try to turn that around. But by the 1990s, early 1990s, when I was in Sacramento, I could see that this industry that I loved so much, newspapering was the only thing I wanted to do, Alex, from the time I was a kid. And I saw this industry contracting and being corrupted by all kinds of negative forces. And it made me very sad on the one hand, but it also made me desperate to try to find a solution.
So you saw the death of the dinosaur media way before the dinosaurs themselves saw it, probably because of your Christian discernment, because people blind themselves. They lie to themselves. Briefly, because we're about to go to break, and I want to get into Bill Clinton and all that coverage and the beginning of WorldNetDaily. Then I want to shift gears into what's happening currently. Joseph Farah, founder and the head of WorldNetDaily, is our guest right now. But what were some of the things corrupting it? I mean, the fact that real muckraking was out because so few companies own things. You didn't want to make advertisers mad. I mean,
things, absolutely. Investigative reporting was hardly done because it was expensive to do. It meant you had to assign reporters to, for long periods of time to do things. Big corporations wanted that dominated the industry. There were just a handful of big corporations that owned all the newspapers. They demanded to make at least 30% profits every year. And it was just a bad situation. Distribution problems, people spreading out, not living in cities anymore, but the cities expanding into suburbs. It meant you had to truck newspapers hundreds of miles to get them to people who wanted to have them. All of those things combined. And the distribution side really opened my eyes because I said, I got a chance living near the Silicon Valley to see the emerging technologies that were coming. And I said to myself, a day is coming very soon where we're not going to need this newsprint, these big barrels of ink, and all this heavy manufacturing equipment to get the news out to people. So I was ready for it when the internet came along.
I want to see when we come back where you think it's going now, because I know it makes what's left of the dinosaur media not arrogant anymore, more like a cornered psychotic monkey or something. What they're going to do to try to defeat WND.com, Infowars.com, DrudgeReport.com. I mean, they've got to really, I mean, I know they hate us, I know they hate you, but they've really got to hate Drudge. I mean, you see it. They hate not being able to control perception.
They hate the fact that he's their #1 tip sheet. They can't ignore him.
We're going to come right back with Joseph Farah. I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com. We're also streaming video at prisonplanet.tv. We shall return, and then we'll get into his take on healthcare, Fast and Furious, and the fact that liberty lovers are terrorists in a new Homeland Security funded report, $12 million of your tax money to write fiction. We are back live. We've got the founder of WorldNetDaily on. He's broken so many giant national, international stories with real investigative reporting. You can disagree with some of their political views or whatever. That isn't what matters. The point is, I'm sure Joseph disagrees with some of the things I say and do. The point is, he's a maverick and he's real and he's in charge of his operation. That is so rare today, even with the big internet out there, to have something that's powerful and independent. Oh, there's lots of things out there that, you know, again, I don't want to get off into it all day. It's just so interesting to actually have real independent groups out there. And I think that's where we left it off. This is a short segment, Joseph. Long one coming up to get into, you know, current issues that are happening. But since you, as a trailblazer, were able to see where things were going and position things, show that you were able to be a major force when you'd already been one before, but even bigger, where do you see things going in the future?
Boy, I wish I knew, but I think that you're on the cutting edge, Mr. Jones. For one thing, I really admire what you're doing with the television stuff. And I think, you know, we all recognize that a lot of people access information in different ways. And I think you're doing a heck of a job with that, you know, kind of being in both worlds, print and TV, and, of course, on radio. I think that's what it's going to take. We're going to have to be more diversified in what we do. When we started WorldNetDaily, we were essentially a newspaper online, and that isn't going to make it any more than the newspapers could make it. You've got to get the information to the people in the way that they want to get it, and that's mobile devices. It's all kinds of things. It might be, you know, on television, on Roku, on whatever. And you're doing it all, and I think you're doing a heck of a job, and we're, frankly, going to be emulating that model. Not to compete with you guys, but it's just a reality of what we got to do.
Oh, hey, listen, Joseph. I mean, like when I was at your office and got to meet your wife and your great crew, I don't see any of this as even competing. This is about defeating the globalists because we don't have a future. I mean, the model that I've developed, I don't even see it as a model. It's any way I can get the word out to people, I'm going to use it because I don't want my guns being taken. I don't want to be forcibly inoculated. I don't want government-run health care with a bunch of eugenicists in control of it. And now shifting gears into that, how right we were. Joseph, you were, again, one of the first groups to really mainstream that a world government was coming. Now they're on CNBC saying we're conquered by foreign banks. What do you make of this planetary corporate fascist system that funds communists at the grassroots to take over? What do you make of this model? What would you call it?
Fascism. That's what I mean. That's the only name for it. It's not communism. That's you know, the left likes to think that there's some kind of a distinction here, but when you've got major corporations in bed with government, there's only one name for that. Look it up in the dictionary, and it's fascism. And we're headed, you know, the trend is to a worldwide fascist cabal. And so you and I and Drudge and people like that need to stick together because I think the thing that unifies us all is we are dead set opposed to that. We believe in free enterprise. We believe in freedom of speech. We believe in a healthy and lively public debate on issues, and there are no sacred cows.
And we don't like the TSA groping our wives and children.
Yeah, especially our children. I've seen it before my own eyes, and you've done a heck of a job in championing that story. very proud of what you've done there.
Well, my children want to go on an airplane, but I can't physically watch them do it to them, so I can't. I mean, it's not like I choose not to fly with my family. I can't hardly... I watch children being drug away, separated, start crying, and the TSA come and bow up in this weird perv posture. And that's why, and then I'm seething with anger for weeks, Joseph. So, I mean, you know, this is really upsetting me.
Yeah, we saw it more than 10 years ago, even, you know, well before even 9/11 with one of our own preteen daughters. And my wife can tell you about that experience someday.
I want to hear it right now, and I'd love to get your wife on. She's an amazing person. Stay there. We're going to be right back with Joseph Farah. Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then, of course, back weekends, 4 to 6 p.m. with the Sunday Show. InfoWars Nightly News, 7 o'clock Central every evening. PrisonPlanet.tv. We're going to go back to Joseph Farah of WorldNetDaily here in just a moment. Something they're reporting on as well is dreams from my real father. I think it's convincing that his real father is the communist Frank Marshall Davis. The whole thing fits. That is available at InfoWarsShop.com. Also, the Greater Good film exposing the deadly vaccines. We're going to talk some about that in the next hour with Dr. Russell Blaylock. All available at InfoWarsShop.com. Now, going back to Joseph Farah. All right, moving quick now. There's so much to talk about. I mean, I talked about where the media is going, where you came from. But now, before we get into the economy and before we get into all the other things that are happening, the healthcare takeover, what else is front and center that you'd like to talk about, Joseph?
Well, gee, that's a tough one. I mean, to me, I think this Fast and Furious thing, which you mentioned earlier, is probably one of the biggest government scandals I have ever witnessed in my lifetime. If you think about it, you know, hey, nobody died at Watergate, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, we took out the President of the United States over that. But in this case, what we've got is a situation where it seems more and more clear every day that this was a government operation with the motivation behind it to disarm Americans and to make the case against individual ownership of firearms for Americans. And the sneaky way they did that was to show how nasty these guns are because they're too available in America, so we let them go over the Mexican border. They wind up in the hands of drug cartels and people get murdered. And, you know, the scenario worked out just the way they planned it, except for the fact that it blew up in their face to a certain extent because the American people found out about it. And but, you know, this is, you talk about impeachable offenses. I mean, this is beyond impeachable. This is treason of the highest order. And it doesn't stop at Eric Holder because we've all seen the you know, the videos of in the White House in 2009 when the White House was saying the president directed this and he directed that, and this goes right to the very top. And so, to me, that's one of those burning issues. I get very angry when I read about the Fast and Furious scandal.
Well, I agree with you, but also I get very concerned, as you do, I know. This shows, wow, we were really right. I mean, this is the same crew that was all over Oklahoma City. I know WorldNetDaily's one of the few places that's got credibility, that's had the courage to report on what really went on there. But layer after layer of government-controlled operations, I mean, you can't doubt that. And, of course, now that's what lends so much credence to other false fags.
If you go back to Oklahoma City, by the way, Alex, that's the first time when the media and the political establishment started pointing the fingers at guys like you and me and even Rush Limbaugh. You know, this was a right-wing thing that was going, a right-wing anti-government thing. Now we hear that almost on a daily basis from the government. Where's the danger to Americans coming from? Latest DHS report once again shows it's from, you know, right-wing people who they value their freedom. I mean, can you imagine? Are the founding fathers not turning over in their graves when they hear government officials saying that the problem in America is we got too many freedom-loving people.
That's like saying the problem is the Founding Fathers, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. They're saying the 4th of July is terrorist. In fact, here it is. Americans, this is from the report, who believe their way of life is under attack. You have to be under a rock not to know that. Americans who are fiercely nationalistic. I mean, what's the point of having a nation? As opposed to universal or international in orientation, meaning let foreign banks run you. Here's another one. People who consider themselves anti-global, presumably those who are wary of the loss of sovereignty. Here's the best. Americans who are suspicious of centralized federal authority. That's all the founders. Anyone with a common sense or room temperature IQ and above. Americans who are reverent, this is a quote, of individual liberty. Oh my gosh, don't be reverent of individual liberty. This is terrible.
You know, and previous versions of these reports have also singled out people who believe in the Bible and returning military veterans. In other words, all of the people, you know, who we value in this country, people like you and I value in this country, people who, you know, understand that we're supposed to be a self-governing nation of responsible individuals who take care of themselves and are self-reliant and don't depend on government, we're the problem. We're the enemy.
Because the enemy has taken over and is diametrically opposed to any basic freedom evidenced. But, I mean, even though you're informed, I'm informed, still to see it all happening, world government, run by banks, government takeover of healthcare, attacks to the insurance companies, with these idiots thinking they're about to get a free handout. What is your, well, I mean, getting back to the false flags. Mm-hmm. This is a false flag. Fast and Furious is a staged, slow burn terror attack, tens of thousands of guns and hand grenades to Mexico to blame the Second Amendment. They got caught. As you know, their own memos, even CBS News covers it, saying we're going to use this to get anti-gun legislation passed. They're caught. They're caught.
They're caught. But what's happening? I mean, you know, I know there's things taken. This whole congressional investigation to me is taking way too long. Way too long. We got an election coming up in November. When are we going to see some justice done here? When are we going to see some results from all this?
Well, we're seeing in the court of public opinion, though, nothing has woken up people like Fast and Furious, in my view. And now Obama legalizing the illegals, shutting down power plants outside of law, and the health care. Your view, your breakdown, your boil down on the flip-flopping of the Supreme Court, what your intel, because you're right there, right by the Supreme Court in Virginia. What do you think really happened?
Well, my intel wasn't very good because I didn't expect. Listen, I'm telling you, I never thought that John Roberts was, you know, he was never, in my opinion, a Scalia, an Alito, or a Thomas in his view. He's always been more of an establishment Republican, and so I never had high expectations from him. But I thought, you know, if there was going to be a problem in this case, that it would more likely be Kennedy than Roberts, who, you know, if you look at their previous rulings, Roberts generally was with the other three. Kennedy was the one swing vote. So who would have expected that we'd get Kennedy and we'd lose Roberts? I don't think anybody saw that coming. But now, of course, as people are doing the diagnosis on this, we learned that you know, he was with Scalia, and he somehow got seduced by the liberals to go with him. This happens when you're in Washington too long. It happens. You know, what do they call it in the Washington Post when somebody with conservative instincts starts to go the other way? They call it, oh, he's growing. He's growing, right? It means he likes to be invited to the right cocktail parties in Washington and likes being taken seriously by the major media. That's what it means.
But that's all coming to an end. Being taken serious more and more by the mainstream prostitutes is a death sentence with the heart of this country. And that's accelerating. What do you expect the power structure to do? Because in my view, in my analysis, their credibility is draining away. I mean, how many armored vehicles, how many hollow point bullets, how many helicopters, how many drones, how many SWAT teams? I mean, we know the system knows we don't like them and that they have a 9% approval rating in Congress, and their answer is, we're going to arm to the teeth against you and say that Mom and Apple Pie and George Washington are terrorists.
That's right. Well, I think like you, I have a lot of optimism because I have a lot of faith, not necessarily in the majority of the American people anymore, but in a very, very healthy segment of the American people who are not going to take this stuff laying down. By the way, Alex, remember when you were in my office in Virginia, one of my crew asked if you had ever seen a drone, and you answered no, you hadn't. I get back home within a week or two of that conversation. I'm taking my dog for a walk, and guess what I see right over the tree line, right above my head, is a drone.
Incredible.
So if anybody calls you crazy, Alex, for talking about the drones, you can just send them my way, and because I've seen it with my own eyes. I only wish I had my cell phone camera to get a picture of it. That's why I haven't said anything about it publicly before.
Now, how high was it? Was it a low?
Oh, it wasn't high at all. And I didn't even know. At first, I couldn't even make out what it was because it had such a weird sound. It sounded like there was a lawnmower over my head, and it looked like nothing I had ever seen before. So I immediately jump on the internet. I start looking up drones, and I'm seeing things that resemble what I saw. And one of the characteristics I saw described was it can sound like a lawnmower over your head, for crying out loud. So that was my confirmation that for some reason, and then I later found out that in Northern Virginia here, even the police departments are using drones.
And now they want to arm them, and all over the country they've been using them for surveillance. We found the EPA documents where in 2009 they were doing it, and they ran a national story saying InfoWars ran a hoax, Drudge picked it up, so did WorldNetDaily, all these other evil publications, hundreds of articles, nightly news shows, Media Matters, what a joke. And then they played a straw man because the article we wrote also linked to a local story in the Dakotas where they were, and other states where they were complaining about calling them drones because they just arrested those cattle rustlers, alleged cattle rustlers, using a predator. But then they conflated it, mixed it in with the EPA Cessnas they're using to spy on farmers. The point is they're spying with everything, and they spun it with a straw man that we'd made it up when they're announcing 30,000 of them in the FAA budget in the next decade, and they're launching all over the place. I mean, here's another example of this, and I want to ask you, what is this tactic? I mean, what type of disdain do they have for the public, Joseph Farah of WorldNetDaily.com? Because the Inspector General comes out, they have the Supreme Court say it is a tax that the IRS takes from you, but then they call it a penalty or something. And then Obama's people say, no, it's not a tax, it's a penalty. And then they play this mind game. I mean, what is this? Like, there's not drones, there's not an IRS tax in healthcare.
That's right. Who are you supposed to believe, me or your own eyes? Obama tells us, no, it's not a tax. Then we get the Supreme Court saying it's constitutional because it's a tax. It is just unbelievable. Orwell was just a little bit early, ahead of the curve with 1984, because now we see this kind of newspeak all the time in the 21st century.
I'm seeing it more and more. I mean, literally, they're just offering the public, join the illusion, everything's okay, as scores of Texas police departments and sheriff's departments announced. Houston did this years ago. They're getting them, they're weaponizing them. It's in the Houston Chronicle, and then they're running national news stories in hundreds of papers, Joseph, saying we made that story up. And I'm just like, what is the disconnect here?
Right. And the real question is, what is the purpose of these things? The one I saw, for instance, is over. I don't live in the city, okay? I don't live in a populated area. I live in one of the most rural places you could possibly live in Northern Virginia. And there could only be one thing that this drone was spying on, and that would be me. That would be my property, because there's just nothing else around except woods and deer. Unless they were doing a deer count with that drone, they were up there to look at what I was up to.
Wow, this is breaking news. We've got to get a report out on this. Not only did you see one of the little drones that they've had on the news, they admit sound like a lawnmower with the little feet on the bottom.
Right.
But but you live in a rural area and you were out walking and it was obviously looking for something on your property, probably harassment. This is well, you are a terrorist. I mean, you do love liberty, right?
Guilty as charged.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we got our work cut out for us. And, more and more, I recognize that the liberty lovers out there really have to stick together. Like you said, we might agree or disagree on this topic or that topic. Fundamentally, if you are a liberty lover, we got to stick together, or we're going to hang together, as our founders said. And I remember, I probably told you this story when you were visiting our offices a few weeks ago, that before I started WND in 1997, there was no question. I mean, we were inspired by what Drudge had been doing for a year or two at that point. And I called up Drudge to tell him what I was about to do, and I told him that I wasn't doing it to compete with him. I had a little bit different spin on how I was going to do it. I spent my whole career in journalism, was going to try to utilize some of that experience. And, I told him, I see the Internet, particularly, as a cooperative medium, much more than a competitive medium. So, when Alex Jones promotes Drudge, and Drudge promotes Farah, and Farah promotes Jones, it all works together for the benefit of all of us. And it's just something to keep in mind. And I know that is true of all the organizations out there, the Tea Party organization. One thing I can't stand about this Tea Party thing is why are all these different Tea Party groups? Why don't they get together? Why don't they get together on and stop competing with one another for?
Yeah, have like a Declaration of Independence where they get together.
Have a convention. Get it together, guys. What are the top 10 most important issues, and let's focus on those. What's happened since 2010 when the Tea Party really awakened this country and seems to be shaking things up?
Joseph Farah is our guest. We've got one little 5-minute segment left, but I got him on 5 minutes late, so we'll take him into 5 after, into the next hour before Dr. Blaylock joins us so we can talk about a few other issues. But I have hope for this country. It's just that the people that have taken it over are so vicious, they'll stage terror attacks like the event that we saw with Fast and Furious to be able to take over. And I'm sure you saw, I'm going to come back and ask you about this, even Glenn Beck, before he left Fox, showing the Democratic internal fundraising letters, and Shapiro in the Financial Times of London saying a new Oklahoma City or 9/11 will save Obama.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, remember, whatever they accuse you of doing, that's what they're doing. That's the important thing to remember. We can't even imagine the horrible things they have in store for us.
Exactly. I want to talk about that when we come back, because if they're putting out news articles saying, gee, a terror attack to blame our enemies would help, they're the prime suspects if it happens. We'll be right back. We have this segment, one more, with the head honcho over at WorldNetDaily.com, WND.com. I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.tv. We're fighting the prison planet with the info war. But we do have the power structure that sees this country building up and trying to use paramilitary forces against us. That's why we've got to engage the police and military and educate them. There's a reason the globalists that have hijacked this nation are saying we're the terrorist. And we're going to talk to Joseph Farah about that here in a moment. But here's how Rowdy Piper, I guess he is a terrorist. There's an alien occupying group in the fiction film. They live occupying Earth. They've brainwashed the public. And a drone flies over, and he resists the drone. And so you have to ask the police. I mean, if that scenario happened, and like a Simpsons episode and a giant green lizard was at the podium, would you submit to them? This is an outside globalist takeover. Here's what Rowdy Piper does to drones.
And who are you, little fella? Come to show them where I am. Not nice.
All right, there you go. That Rowdy Piper has music under it. But my point here is we're designed to face a foreign enemy, like a Hitler, a Stalin, whatever. But how do we face this economic sabotage And your concerns about the clear frame-up that different forces of globalism are preparing for American patriots who they know are aware of the game plan, Joseph Farah.
Right. Well, remember, what you have to remember is that this is a game of control for them. There are people, to you and I, Alex, I think I speak for you, we don't want to control other people. You know, we might want to influence them, certainly want to influence them, and we want to educate them, but we don't want to control them. But there are people in this world who actually want to control all of us. That's how they maintain their power, and that's what we have to remember. So we have to resist all attempts to control us, whether they're telling us our kids have to have these mandatory vaccines, or whatever, or they tell us in order to get on an airplane you've got to be groped. This is where the resistance starts, because this is part of conditioning for what is really the end game for them, which is we're all going to be global citizens. We don't have any say in our governments and so forth. It's everything our founding fathers fought against, and we got to be like our founding fathers all over again. And the only question in my mind is whether we have the fearlessness, the courage, and the convictions that they have to do that.
Joseph Farah, well said, very eloquent and very true. Veritas, if I ever heard it. Doesn't the system overreach when FEMA, I have it on video, demonizes the founding fathers and all these training manuals? Don't they really show us that they really are the bad guys?
There's no question about. I know who the bad guys are. You know who the bad guys are. Probably everybody listening to us right now knows who the bad guys are, and they're exposing themselves every single day. And our main job is to help them expose themselves. When they say these things and put them down in writing, we got to show the whole world. And we got to contrast that with what made this nation great. Hey, yesterday was the 4th of July, right? Yesterday was the day the Declaration of Independence was signed. It's time for us to renew those vows that our founders took and mean it.
It is time to decide who we serve. Like the great Bob Dylan says, you got to serve somebody, you got to serve something. And as for me and my house, we want to serve liberty and justice and freedom, not bondage and tyranny and drones and checkpoints. We'll be right back in 60 seconds. This is our final little 5-minute segment with Joseph Farah of WND.com, WorldNetDaily, pioneering anti-New World Order operation. And we're going to get into the whole healthcare monstrosity and some big news on vaccine cover-ups, knowing that the vaccines are actually causing the diseases. This has come out in court, their own internal documents. Dr. Russell Blaylock joining us coming up in the next segment. Joseph Farah again here with us now. In closing, I almost forgot. I guess in a week and a half, you've got big news. Sheriff Joe Arpaio, Maricopa County, is going to break it at WorldNetDaily, saying that it's the biggest news yet on the providence of Obama. Tell us a sneak peek of that, and also who you really think he is, because what we know is we don't know who he is.
We don't know who he is. We're I don't even know if we're any closer to knowing. You talk about false flags. This guy is a walking false flag. He is the personification of. Nobody knows anything about this guy from where he was born, when he was born, who his parents were. How the heck is he using a Connecticut Social Security number all these years? Why is it that when you go to E-Verify for the guy who's sitting in the White House, he comes up as somebody you can't hire in America? I mean, it's crazy stuff. And one guy, I've said all along, we're not going to get to the bottom of this because of court actions. No judge in America is going to have the guts to say that the guy sitting in the White House is not eligible to be there. I've said that, all along. I admire people who pursue that route, but nevertheless, that's just not a practical reality. What Joe Arpaio is different. This is the first law enforcement investigation of Obama's background. It goes beyond even the eligibility questions as he's gone into this Social Security stuff, the draft card business. And on July 17th, he's going to be announcing his latest findings in this independent investigation. And we'll be live streaming it on WND TV. So be sure to watch for that. I honestly don't know many details of what's going to be coming out there. even though, our Jerry Corsi is working very closely with the Arpaio investigation.
Well, I know it's great to build stuff up, but Breitbart's like, I'm releasing the most incredible info tomorrow, and he dies.
Exactly.
And they announce in like an hour and a half, oh, it's natural, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. I don't know what really happened there, but if something happens to me like that, folks, I want a real investigation.
I want an autopsy. I'm on the record right now. Cut me up.
Joseph,
publicly.
Joseph Farah, that's another final question for you. You've already got drones out at your place. Tell us a little bit about threats, harassment. I know I've gotten it. You have had to have had some hurdles.
Yeah, many death threats over the years. But the most substantive stuff that I can point to that's very real, and it happened during the Clinton administration, very early on in the Clinton administration. Even before I started WorldNetDaily, the Clinton administration started auditing me, and I began investigating what that was all about. We determined, guess what? They were investigating all their enemies, all the women who'd made accusations against them, all the conservative organizations in America. Everybody was getting audited who was an adversary of Bill Clinton, and we exposed that. Well, guess what happens again starting in 2009? The audit train is, I don't know if they hit you yet, Alex, but they hit me, and they dinged me, disallowing every exemption I had on my tax form, but I'm very careful, Yeah,
they don't even call it an audit. They just start sending me letters saying, you don't get this, you don't get that, give us more money.
So this is one of the tactics they use, and look, this is the first term. If he's reelected, it's going to be war.
Oh, they're openly saying.
They will be at war. We will be hunted down like dogs, Alex Jones. Just keep that in mind. That's what the stakes are.
Oh, I don't want to end the interview now. Look, come back on next week. I want to hear strategy, what you think of Mitt Romney. Joseph Farah, WorldNetDaily, thank you so much for the time.
Good being with you.
Amazing. It is now breaking in the news, something that we've talked about years ago that I started witnessing. The TSA now, if you're getting a hamburger, a drink, anything, after the checkpoints, before you get on your plane, they are now coming over and telling you to drink your drink. They make women drink their breast milk if it's in a bottle. Drink Coca-Cola, bottled water. All about making you think you've done something wrong. It's total garbage. And now they're expanding out to the highways everywhere. Not just to the parking lots. And again, terrorists can hit the parking lot, so now they got to be in the parking lot. They can hit the road down the street. Now they've got to. This is the takeover of society that's happening right now. And then we have the other big article. Homeland Security report lists liberty lovers as terrorists. Americans who are suspicious of centralized federal authority revert are reverent of individual liberty, deemed domestic threat. And that was a $12 million funded 2011 program funded by the folks that run this country. And they say in the report, if you believe in a global government, you're a terrorist. Okay, so if I read the Financial Times of London or CNBC 2 weeks ago where they announced, yes, we're ruled by a global government run by banks. They're unelected, but we're lucky to have them. So if you say world government's good and that banks running it are good, well, that's good. Then you're a normal, good person. But if you say, I don't want that, it doesn't exist, and you're insane. This is the doublespeak. It's kind of like they announce, yeah, it's a tax. The IRS is going to enforce health care. And people say, well, we don't want to have a tax with the IRS. And they go, it's not a tax. It doesn't exist. You're like, but the ruling says, and the Solicitor General, and it's all on record. And they just go, no, it's not. You're crazy. And you're like, but that's a mind game you're playing. And again, they know just make it about the debate. Never admit to anything. What did Bill Clinton say? Deny, 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 deny. Doesn't matter what they've got. Doesn't matter what proofs. Just deny, 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 deny. It'd be like driving up to your house and burglars. I've actually read about this. This actually works with some people. They're so suggestible now and mindless. You can be walking out with their television sets, their computers, their jewelry, and just, hey, what are you doing? You're robbing me. And most people, if you're just real calm, criminals, cat burglars and folks have actually written books about this. If you're just real calm and go, no, I'm not, I'm helping Bobby. Just make up a name. They'll be, what? Yeah, hey, just go in and talk to him. He's in there right now. And it's like, you don't need to see our identification. These aren't the droids you're looking for. Move along. These aren't the droids we're looking for. Move along. You know, the New World Order can have a strong influence on the weak-minded. And they're like out saying, there's no drones. Well, there's no drones being launched. Well, it's in my paper. They just got them and are arming them. Oh, no, that doesn't exist. Now, joining us is really an amazing individual, one of my favorite guests, and we really appreciate him coming on the transmission with us today, Dr. Russell Blaylock. And we'll give you both of his websites today. RussellBlaylockMD.com is one of the sites. He also has his wellness center. We'll give you that web address. And I wanted to get him on last week, but it took us a while because he was busy, to talk about the healthcare ruling. And I'm going to try to give him the floor. I'll never shut up for the next few segments to give us his view, his take as a retired brain surgeon who developed many of the procedures used today. Expert in nutrition, who's written all these peer-reviewed, now part of the nomenclature of excitotoxins. I mean, really a trailblazer. That's who we have on here, is trailblazing mavericks that have been proven right. And he said 3.5 years ago that this is going to increase the amount of people getting the flu. It's going to lower immunity. It's going to cause neurological disorders. The media attacked him, all confirmed in triplicate. Over and over and over again, he's pointed out with the studies that are even out there that many of the, and we're going to cover this after he talks about healthcare, vaccines are actually causing it. They had to admit in California, most of the whooping cough cases that they call an epidemic are from the shot. Most of the so-called polio now, even CBS News admits, is from the polio vaccine. So all of this is happening, and now Natural News has this big breaking report, and we have the documents from the court. We're going to show this later. If you're watching on prisonplanet.tv, if not, just go to Infowars.com or naturalnews.com. Merck vaccine fraud exposed by 2 Merck virologists. Company faked mumps vaccine efficacy. Results for over a decade, says lawsuits. This is people leaking it and the documents that it was actually giving people the pathogen and making them sick. Incredible. And I'm springing this on Dr. Blaylock, so I may, during... we've got his email, folks. Send him this article right now so you can read it during the next break if he hasn't seen it. But he joins us now without further ado. And again, RussellBlaylockMD.com. And there's also the Wellness Center. Just type in his name, you'll get it. Again, doctor, thank you for coming on with us. Did you feel like you were sucker punched? I mean, I physically got nauseous, which really never happens with even bad news, when I got that ruling, knowing the IRS is now going to be in my medical records and running my life even more, the collection agency for the Federal Reserve. What did you think the minute you got the news that morning, sir?
Well, in this day and age, hardly anything surprises me, Alex. So kind of like you, that if you can think of it, they'll do it. And if you are a student of this and look at the history over the last several hundred years, you see that these are the type of proposals and events that are staged to bring about their utopian dream. I was surprised that the Supreme Court did not rule this unconstitutional. It was a surprise, and particularly Robert Stan. The conservative talking heads are trying desperately to justify what he's done, but I think the careful analysis indicates that he made a very bad decision. Why he did it will be unveiled later, I'm sure. But this is going to affect everybody in the United States. This could be the tipping point for the United States to put us in the position of Greece. The cost of this is going to be just astronomical. And, of course, the international bankers who loan the money to fund these sort of things are loving this. What the public doesn't realize, most of your taxes do not go to run programs in the United States. They go directly to pay the interest on the national debt. Only a very small percentage ever ends up in the federal coffers to pay for programs. So every time one of these mega programs is created, it's not your taxes that are going to be paying it. Your taxes will pay the interest on the money they borrowed to fund the program. This is true of Social Security, of Medicare, Medicaid. All of these mega programs are funded by deficit spending, not by direct taxation. And that's the illusion. People always say, well, my taxes are going to go up to pay for this, and the conservatives are saying this is going to cause a massive tax increase to pay for this. Well, it is a massive tax increase, the most massive in American history, but it's not paying directly for your health care. It's paying for the interest on the loan that they took from the international bankers to pay for the program. Nothing is ever done directly by taxes. That's an illusion. You read Rasmussen's book about his analysis of this. You see that he has all the numbers and data and figures to show you that indeed is true. So we need to get over this illusion that you're paying taxes to run the government. I have a lot of friends who make a lot of money and they pay big taxes, and they say, well, I don't mind supporting the country and doing my part. And I said, well, would you mind if you found out that your taxes were not supporting the military and supporting highway building and Social Security, if you found out your taxes were just paying international bankers to loan fake money to the federal government to run these programs? Well, then it's a whole different ballgame. Then you're not too happy. Well, no, I don't like the fact that you're taking my hard-earned income and giving it to international bankers so they can loan you fake money. And that's what happens.
And take control of your life and announce. Did you see the CNBC clip where they said, yes, we're slaves to foreign banks, and basically it's a wonderful thing?
Yeah, and of course, this was the big argument between F.A. Hayek back in the 1920s and 30s and the socialists of the London School of Economics was that the idea of deficit spending was a good thing. And when I grew up, when you would argue about the cost of government, people say, well, what difference does it make if we have a huge national debt? We only owe it to ourselves, because they thought that Federal Reserve was truly a government banking system. But now that we know beyond any question that it's a cartel of international bankers, many of which are foreign, they're not even American banks, that are making these loans to the American government to run its government, well, it's a different ballgame. It's an illusion. It's fraud. And if any of us did that in our private lives or our businesses, we'd be charged with fraud and serve long prison terms. The federal government does it repeatedly, and they have the people thinking, well, we only owe it to ourselves. Well, you don't. You owe it to international bankers.
And they position us into fraudulent debt and sign us onto their debts and then grandstand and tell us we shouldn't take hot showers because it makes the carbon hurt the earth, while they literally live the lives of kings flying around on their private jets. It is beyond ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and you look at, any socialist system, it's sold on the idea, well, planning is much more frugal than an unplanned, laissez-faire society. But when you look at the history of socialism, you see the exact opposite. When the federal government or the state government does these things, it costs hundreds, if not thousands of times more than any private organization.
And it creates corrupt insider groups that deliver total tyranny and hell.
Right, and you look at it, you go through this so-called Obama health care.
Stay there. Let's do that, doctor. We've got a break. We're going to come back, go through it, what it's going to do. As a medical doctor, what you think it's going to do. And stay there. Who's been a big critic of this government takeover of health care. Break this down. He's absolutely right. It is a tax, mainly to the insurance companies. You have the socialist idiots and people that, just like the Obama supporters that said, oh, I'm getting a free house, free car now. You didn't get that, did you? The very same interests fund all these people. Definitely, though, it's moving in high gear right now. And it's all coming true. I mean, folks, we're not just calling them tyrants and authoritarians because we don't like what they're doing. These are horrible, bad people. And I know most of the listeners know that, but I mean, every day it has to sink in deeper to even me that, hey, this isn't a game. None of this is a game. This isn't a joke, okay? These are seriously bad people who want a re-education purge of this country. Remember, 2 months ago, we get that Army document about re-education camps. The Army got press calls and came out and said, yes, that is our document, and you're not supposed to have it. It's restricted. So, and that's why they move by increment. But at a certain point, the water's boiling here. Dr. Blaylock, I'm going to try to shut up. Please get into what this health care is going to do from your expert inside view of what it's going to do to health care overall. Of course, their plan is to fully bankrupt the old system, but tell us what you think is going to happen now.
Well, you see a lot of people talk about this as a 2,500-page bill, and it was difficult for the congressmen and senators to read through this massive bill and understand it. Well, actually, the bill is hundreds of thousands of pages. If you actually read the thing, what you see is on every page are references to other bills, other laws, other bureaucratic departments and directives. So you have to read those to understand that section, and they'll refer to another section. So actually this is several 100,000 pages that you'd have to read to truly understand it. But what you get from this is several things. And, of course, if you read the history of this, what they've wanted from the beginning, you see that this is just designed to give a blank check to the federal government to fill in the blanks, and they'll do what they want. It's sort of like that blithering idiot Pelosi said, we need to pass this bill so we can find out what's in it. Well, you look at it, it's a blank check. You fill in the blanks. But we know for sure what it does. It punishes physicians for caring for you. If the physician gives too much care, he's punished. It gives the government great latitude in being able to determine what specialty a physician goes in, and even to retrain physicians that are already in a specialty. You may say, well, we don't need any more gastroenterologists. We're going to make you a general practitioner. And we don't need any more in your area of the country. We need some in North Dakota, so you need to pack your family and move to North Dakota. Well, this isn't pie in the sky. This is something they've been dreaming about and writing about for over a century, that there's a maldistribution of physicians. There's too many in the wrong specialties, and we need more general practitioners. And so they've written these plans repeatedly, and this bill allows that. A lot of talk about the death panels. Well, what it says in there in specific language is that we'll have a panel that will discuss with the family and the patient, if they're awake, end-of-life discussion. And then it says only certain government-approved agencies will be able to give these panel discussions, which means that it'll have to conform to what Emmanuel, I've got his name now, the president's advisor on medical matters.
Rahm Emanuel.
And his brother, Ezekiel Emanuel. Now, his brother has written extensively on what he calls the worth of life. And
Tom Daschle said it. They've all, now they admit, when they couldn't pass it at first, they said, there's no death panels. Now Bill Gates is like, kill an old lady, hire 10 teachers. And the teachers are like clapping. They have no idea what they're getting into.
Well, they don't. And you see, these things were also discussed extensively under National Socialism, under Mussolini's fascism and Soviet Russia, and Communist China. These things are topics that are openly discussed, that in fact, what we need to do is get rid of the useless eaters. That was the term the Nazis used, was useless eaters. People with complex diseases, people with chronic diseases, multiple sclerosis, people with rheumatoid arthritis, crippling diseases, the blind, the aged. These people are just useless eaters. They contribute nothing to society.
Dr. Blaylock, stay right there. We got a long segment coming up, and you're going to just, again, have the floor to break this down with precision, what's really in the health care bill. And now they're admitting all this, too. They're like, yeah, we're going to not give you health care. Yeah, we're going to do all that, yeah.
We're on the move.
Freaks. want to run your life. It's what they like. People that are not sick in the head, want to just control their own life and want to have a secure life and raise happy children and empower humanity. But history shows that the worst of us crave power and control and do horribly depraved things. And if you don't know about that, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a new history or a new listener, I suggest you go investigate history and take a crash course in it, because it is scary. And these corrupt groups do the same thing over and over again. Everything they're setting up is what the communists and the fascists did, because there's really no difference. There's difference in window dressing. It's like grape Kool-Aid with cyanide in it versus cherry. And they try to confuse you politically by giving all these different names of the same thing. It's like saying, you can buy this car, but we have it in 5 colors. It's all about keeping you unconscious, unaware, in kind of a dreamlike state, while they do a lot of horrible stuff and openly talk about shutting off our resources with the carbon taxes, Gen 21. But this healthcare thing, as Dr. Blaylock just said, is thousands of pages long, hooked into code and other laws, and is the same way it is in Europe. It lets them do whatever they want, and they're telling us what they're going to do. Now, Dr. Blaylock, please continue. You were getting into population reduction, which all the top people ad nauseum write books about. What's so amazing is this conspiracy against humanity by the miscreant, mentally ill people that tend to get into power, like cancer. It just takes over. It doesn't mean it's even dominant. It's like a virus. These diseased minds that tend to get into control. I don't even know what you call this, but they are waging war on everything good, and they crave wrecking things. Please continue.
Well, F.A. Hayek wrote a paper some years ago that the title told it all. The title of the paper was Why the Worst Always Get on Top. And he said that productive, creative people are out producing, creating, taking care of their family, and doing their jobs. People who are not creative, who want to rule and dominate, they look for power positions. They really create nothing. They produce nothing. But they do produce a lot of misery. But they have these grandiose plans, these visions, these utopian ideas. And ever since Plato, we've had one dreamer after another who was going to plan society, streamline it, and show us the way to nirvana. But the problem is all of them end up in gulags, mass death, and police states. When you look back in history, even within the modern history, we see that the Soviet Revolution in 1917 was just defended in glowing terms by some of the biggest, most prestigious names in America. We had the vice president, Henry Wallace, just praising the Soviet experiment. We had Pulitzer Prize-winning writers for the New York Times praising the Soviet experience.
And just to briefly interrupt, I have to just to back you up for folks that don't know, from the 20s right through until the late 40s, our media kept it secret that they were killing tens of millions of people, including little children, putting them in camps and starving them to death. And they still, the nouveau riche types go to bars called Mao's and stuff and think it's cute. It's like seeing somebody walk on the street with a big swastika is offensive. Well, so is a red star. I'm sorry, but you're making the point. The elite here, they were in love with it.
Yeah, I mean, the very, very powerful, prestigious people, university professors, politicians, very popular people, very intellectual people, were supporters of Stalin. And even people like Walter Durante, who won the Pulitzer Prize for the New York Times, traveled with Malcolm Muggeridge to the Ukraine during the height of the Ukrainian starvation, where the Soviets purposely starved 10 million people to death. And Muggeridge was just appalled. He couldn't believe seeing such things, bodies stacked up like cordwood. And he turned to Walter Durante and he said, "This is a horror. He said, I thought the Soviet experiment was good. And Durani's response was, well, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. A Romanian who had been a communist and witnessed the same thing, when he was told this very same thing, you got to break some eggs to make an omelet, he said, I see the broken eggs, but where's the omelet? So we live in these utopian visions, and that's what we're seeing today. The people like Obama and the Rockefellers and the CFR trilateralists, they go before the public and they paint this beautiful picture where everybody's going to get health care. You're going to see your own physician. It's just a matter of the government paying for it. We're going to redistribute income so it's more fair and there's justice. They paint this beautiful picture. What people don't realize, that's the exact same picture painted in Soviet Russia in 1917, 1920s, and 1930s. It's the very same picture.
It's like Groundhog Day. It's like Groundhog Day.
It's the same picture painted by Mussolini and the defenders of Mussolini and fascist Italy. So this is not the first time we've seen these beautiful mosaics painted and constructed for public consumption, only to turn into the worst nightmare the world's ever known. I mean, Soviet communism and socialism has killed in the 20th century hundreds of millions of people. It has put tens of millions in the gulags every year, the worst conditions you can imagine. Most Americans are not even aware of that. Most Americans have never heard of the Ukrainian forced starvation of 10 million people. They don't know what centralization and central planning could do to the mass of man, but we're going to find out very quickly here because, as you say repeatedly, this is all being put in place. Stalin used to use the term slice the salami. He said, you don't take power all at once, you cut a little piece off and you take that for yourself, and another little piece and another little piece. Pretty soon, you own it all. And you have so much power, nobody can resist you. And what you learn from history is that as a government becomes more and more dictatorial and totalitarian, it begins to fear the people because it's promised the people this utopia, but the utopia never comes. And so they're so terrified of being overthrown by the people, they have to create a police state to oppress them, and they have to hunt enemies of the state. And that's what we're saying now. We're having people, if you're a Tea Party member, you're an enemy of the state, you're a danger. If you have a sticker on your car about the Constitution or mention the Constitution, the police departments are told to keep an eye on you, that you're a danger. Well, who thought in this country, in my lifetime, that if you utter patriotic utterances, that now you're a domestic terrorist, you're a danger, that only if you talk about increasing the power of government, hailing the government for having rule over every aspect of your life, only if you're willing to give up your private property are you a good citizen. Well, these are the things we heard in Nazi Germany and Mussolini's Italy and in the Soviet Union. Now we're hearing them here.
And it's so alien to our system, and now it's so naked. As you said, the salami slicing or the frog in the pot. First they said, oh, we're not in a pot. Well, we're in a pot, but it's okay, but it's not hot. Well, now it's warm, but hey, it's nice like a hot tub. Now it's bubbling, and they're saying, never mind, and openly saying the Founding Fathers are bad and FEMA training manuals and video. I mean, if I was a cop in a meeting, and I've had the cops call, and they say it actually does wake them up, and they go in there and start bad-mouthing freedom and the Founding Fathers and private property. I mean, these are just outrageous criminals. They're the enemy. It's so obvious. I mean, how have we gone this far, Dr. Blaylock?
Well, it's because we denied education to our public. Our public has no idea what goes on in socialist and communist and fascist and national socialist country. We teach our children about Nazism. We talk about the Holocaust. But we don't talk about the fact, well, there's many aspects of National Socialism that if you remove the Holocaust from it, our great intellectuals in this country were using this as examples of progressivism, that we should adopt these National Socialist policies. They liked the social insurance. They liked the medical care system in Nazi Germany. They liked the eugenics programs in Nazi Germany. You know, Nazi Germany had representatives come to Rockefeller to find out how to run the eugenics programs. We don't tell our students that. We don't tell them that Rockefeller sent emissaries to Nazi Germany to meet with Hitler to tell him how to run his eugenics program.
Well, they funded it, the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute.
Absolutely. So there's so much that we don't tell our. There's books written about communism, the Black Book of Communism, Utopian Power. There's all these books that tell all of these things in detail about the experience of
and when you've
planning.
read them and then gone to the original history and find out it's true, they're following it. I'm getting chills right now. Exactly as a total blueprint.
As you read it, it's terrifying because it's the same wording. They don't even change the wording. It's the same arguments. It's the same utopian picture that they paint.
But they know it's not a utopia. They know it's really about the kill grid. And here's an example, 68 Gun Control Act. Senator Dodd, the one that's dead, the senior one, Senator Dodd was a lawyer at the Nuremberg trials, and that was used as an example. So they took the Weimar Republic law, added the Nazi one, only changed the name and a few things, and passed it whole hog as legislation. I mean, I just wanted to back up what you just said right there.
Yeah. I mean, but we're not teaching our students that. We teach them this silly nonsense in school, so that they end up, they know absolutely nothing about Nazism. You ask 99% of high school graduates what was the real name of the Nazi Party. They don't know. They don't know it was the National German Workers' Socialist Party. And you ask about what is fascism. Well, there's not one person in 100,000 could define fascism. Because if you define it, you'd say, oh, well, that's what we have in the United States now. Fascism is here. Everything we experience in modern society is fascism. And this health care bill is just saturated with fascism and National Socialism. But our students think, well, if you're not rounding up a racial group or religious group, it's not Nazism. Well, that wasn't the entire essence of National Socialism. A lot of the oppression and killing and shooting came because people were resisting other programs, gun control, property confiscation.
Oh, they were arresting the Seventh-day Adventists. They were arresting whole groups. A lot of times if a Nazi wanted your wife, you were taken away, or wanted your business. I mean, it was hellish. But again, the media only covers one area. But then people don't trust the media, so they say, oh, Hitler must have been good. Now we see that. That's not sophisticated at all. The truth is, as you said, Stalin admired Hitler, and they were buddies at first. And Stalin admired how the Nazis did it because their thugs were so good, and they were able to rob and steal so well, and they imitated each other. None of this is taught. But, I mean, I've read the writings of Hitler. I've read they had the programs of killing little kids and killing old people and all of the socialism and the checkpoints and the neighbors tattling on you and groveling to the government and they had a TSA brown shirt group. I mean, it's the exact same thing.
Well, one of the things that's very closely parallel to this Obama bill is that in Nazi Germany, in order to turn the young people towards the idea of killing off the old and the sick, they would give them math problems in which they would say, how many housing units for young people and young families could you buy with X amount of dollars that we're spending to care for people with chronic illnesses? That was their math problem, and that was to attune their brain to the fact that I could have a house in a nice neighborhood if we weren't wasting all this money keeping these people alive. They should just be willing to die for the good of the state. Well, I read these exact same words and arguments being expressed by Ezekiel Emanuel and the other people that are promoting these national health insurance programs. They use the very same argument.
Tom Daschle, Bill Gates.
The young, if we just quit wasting this money on all these people with chronic illnesses. So we're becoming a society that no longer has a Christian perspective of compassion and empathy and caring about individuals. We're a collectivist society.
And by the way, that's my next point.
We don't care about individuals anymore.
Yes, sir. That's the biggest biggest trick of all this is they sell it about giving people health care, but as you know, under charity care and how my dad was trained, how you were trained, you're supposed to do a large part of it as charity. They have these so-called charity hospitals that are Rockefeller-run that are really about profit. The insurance companies help write this to cut the quality of care, make you buy their product, but I want you to break that down because they say, oh, we're going to give everybody free health care or whatever, but no, it's not really free health care, and now they admit, oh, no, we're going to control what you eat and what you do and surveil that and inventory that, because now we're all paying for it, and it brings you into the collectivist nightmare with all these useless control freaks in the system now having a contract into your life. That's why this makes me physically sick.
Yeah, it's going to be absolute control of the individual, and people don't realize that. They're going to say, well, I still want to eat my barbecued ribs, and I like these fried onion rings. And now you're a federal patient, they'll say, well, you can't eat that anymore. You're going to eat this. Here's your menu. You will pick your food up at this center, and this is what you'll eat. Well, people didn't know that was in the bill. Well, it's written in there in invisible ink. It says that the director of Health and Human Services can decide that later. That's written in the bill. It says she will make this decision later.
No. My children go and test, just did a thing for homeschoolers, but because it's accredited, they were giving them stuff about how great Michelle Obama was. Olive Gardens in places are now having a menu with notes from her, and then they're look at New York going after salt, soft drinks, and now popcorn and milk products.
Sure, it's all about control. I mean, it's sort of like you get some of these states that pass legislation that your toilet can only have so much water to flush because we're going to save water. Well, what people found out, they couldn't flush the waste matter. So they had to flush the toilet 4 or 5 times, and they ended up wasting more water than if they had a normal toilet. Well, planners never think of these things. That's why central planning is such a disaster.
And now they want to inspect your house to make sure you've got the right toilet.
That's right. I mean, you can't buy one. You have to buy their low-water type of toilet. Well, it went to hot water heaters. It's everything. You know, like even in our community here, to cut a tree down on your own property, you got to get permission of the city. So they come out and examine your tree, and you have to pay a fee for them to evaluate whether you can cut a tree in your own land.
And then they can decide, here in Austin, they're not letting them build high-rises because they say you have a tree. But if you're the insiders, then you can cut down any trees you want. It gives them the selective enforcement power. I want to come back and talk about some vaccine news with you in a short 5-minute segment. I can't believe it's gone so fast. And then I also want to ask you about ways to defeat this, where you think it's going. My friends, if you don't have a feeling of urgency in your heart, your gut, and your mind, you're crazy. And I know that our listeners are awake, but we've got to get the ball down the field to everybody else. We got to beat these people. We have got to drop that hammer down. We have got to beat these people. These are dangerous, bad people. I don't want to say I'm scared. I am just filled with excited energy to try to energetically expose these people because they are coming down on us. Dr. Blaylock, we're almost out of time. You've got several websites. I wanted to ask you what the best ones are for people to visit, what you'd like them to visit, because I've already mentioned one of them. And then where do you see things going? Where is the world today? Dr. Blaylock.
Yeah, the website's www.blaylockwellnesscenter.com is the best one. And RussellBlaylockMD.com is my personal website. Well, here's where we're going. The whole thing is designed to push people into total government-controlled health care, but they want it to look voluntary. We're entering a period of depression-like economy. So what they're going to do with this mandate, because when you are forced to buy this insurance, these so-called 45 million people, these things have benefit mandates on them that are going to raise the price of the premium 20 to 50% or more. So you're going to be paying for high-end insurance for a lot of coverage you don't need, like psychiatric care, OBGYN, free contraceptives, free abortion. Well, you know, you may be a single guy or you may be a very Christian family, and you say, I don't need any of that garbage. Well, you're going to buy it are we going to raise you, penalize
So it's
you with this
mandated
tax?
social engineering and a payoff to their friends.
Yeah. And so what's going to happen is because the enormous expense of these policies, as the economy worsens, people say, I can't afford it. And so the government's going to let them opt out and say, well, what you can do is come into the full government system. So then instead of Medicare and Medicaid, we'll just have one system, which they've always wanted. That's been the design. But they want to make it look like it was your decision.
And they've now said this. So that's what Michael Moore said. He said, don't worry. This is the end of the system. We're taking over.
Sure. And it's going to be 100% government run. Now, people don't have any clues in this country as to what government-run insurance does. We hear about the Canadian system and the UK system, how wonderful it is. Well, you really look into it. For instance, in one city, they had thousands of people that were dying, waiting to be cared for. Recent reports that over 130,000 people are dying in British medical care system.
No, they let them die in the front room over 4 or 5 days.
Sure.
Paul Watson, I told you the story, couldn't get rid of his chest cold.
Sure.
Went in and they said, here's a bag of aspirin, get out of here.
Yeah.
And he's like, what?
Well, it's run like the military medical corps. When I was in the military, what they did, they had a little, what we call a cold pack, and it's just over-the-counter garbage. They put in a brown bag, and everybody got the same thing, no matter what's wrong with you. When I tried to order drugs that were third generation for treatment of patients, I was told you can't get those. You can only get first generation. I said, well, those destroy the kidney and the liver. I said, well, that's all we offer. We're a government-run operation. You can't get the fancy stuff. So, people are going to have to get used to, we don't do shoulder replacements anymore. What we'll do is this operation that'll tear loose in about 2 years and you have to have it redone. Or we won't even do the surgery at all. Here's a story of what's coming. I met a young woman whose husband was an ophthalmologist. He operated on a 75-year-old man who was almost blind from cataract, confined to his house. The guy regained full sight. Now he can play golf, go out, enjoy his life. He was charged by the Medicare officials with abusing a Medicare patient. In court, the abuse was that he gave the man his vision back, which was not approved by the government.
Unbelievable, Dr. Blaylock.
He was in prison for 10 years.
Well, stay there. Let's do 5 more minutes in overdrive. We have to finish this story. Unbelievable. Okay, Dr. Russell Blaylock is our guest right now. We're into overdrive with him. RussellBlaylockMD.com, the Blaylock Wellness Center as well. He joins us right now. You were finishing up a story. Recap it. A lot of doctors in droves are quitting, and the media is spinning it like, oh, they're just greedy. But I've seen the statistics. Most doctors are making a lot less money. Sure, there are some specialists in the right area because they're known for being really good that can command, millions of dollars a year. But we're destroying the best healthcare system ever, and it's been ongoing. And so now we're here. But I see these cases now where the government is controlling the type of care people get and openly saying, old people, get a cane instead of getting your cataracts removed. Doctors are being charged that remove cataracts. Tell folks about that.
Yeah, there was a case that I knew quite well that interviewed the wife of this surgeon. He's an ophthalmologist, and he had a 75-year-old patient who had cataracts, and he's near blind. He's constricted to his house, couldn't leave. And so he saw the man and operated on him and fixed him, put new lens in. And the guy could see very well and was able to play golf and had a nice, normal life. Well, charges were filed against him by the Medicare police saying that he had abused a Medicare patient, a federal patient. In court, the charges were that he had abused an Medicare patient, and they said, well, how was the abuse carried out? Well, he gave him back his vision, and we didn't approve it. He's too old to have his cataracts done. And so the doctor was given 10 years in prison. Now, this was a young doctor with young children, and he was put in prison for giving this man back his vision, which the state said the man didn't deserve vision. He could be given a white stick with a red tip on it and he had no reason to leave his home.
And again, that's the socialist model. That's the compassion. And that's what people, we're not joking. I watch C-SPAN, so I watch the Houses of Parliament. And every time I watch it, they admit people are waiting 1.5 years for brain surgery that's almost 100% operable if done within 6 months, but is almost completely fatal if not removed within 6 months. And they get up and go, yes, that's happening, but that's just the way it is. I mean, people don't understand that in these actuaries, they're going to decide who gets what. This is so horrible.
Well, they admit that. You know, there's no cover-up if you read deep into what they're writing, what they're saying, what they're saying in the lectures, is that, yes, this is what we do, and individuals will be sacrificed. It's, again, breaking some eggs to make an omelet.
And the truth is they just like to break eggs.
Well, they you know, some of them are true believers. They think this utopia is going to come about. But as it gets worse and they realize they can't do it, they get desperate. And so then they start rationing severely to save on cost. The more they ration, the more people die, the more people suffer, the longer people wait for care. You know, you keep hearing this nonsense. There's people in this country can't get care. Everybody in this country, I don't care if you don't have a dime, if you can get into an emergency room and they'll give you a free ride, you will get all the care that anyone with millions of dollars gets. You get care in this country immediately. And what they found, interestingly, in England, is after national health insurance, you couldn't even get it by going to the emergency room because the waiting was too long.
Listen,
and
Paul Watson
would turn you away because the wait was too long.
Watson had money, you know, to get a private doctor, but they have to allow you. The political class doesn't just let everybody who has money for the private doctor get it. It's total control.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, these doctors mostly aren't quitting because their incomes are falling. It's because many of them can't even afford to run their offices anymore. And most of them are so overwhelmed with paperwork, rules, regulations, threats of imprisonment. They can't sleep at night. They're haggard. Friends of mine that are just excellent doctors, they're so worn from this, they just can't take it.
Incredible, Dr. Blaylock.
Great.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my dad, who's a dentist, says now the enforcers come in and are just like, this is not a free country anymore. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Amazing interview. Very powerful. We'll be back, folks. Sick of the globalist eugenicist control freaks adding poison to your water and laughing as you get sick and die? Start purifying your water with ProPure. My friends, I've done a lot of research, and the best gravity filter out there, bar none, is ProPure. And it's available discounted at Infowars.com. Its filters are silver and